Welcome back, everybody, to the Ball and Breakfast podcast. We've definitely taken a break here with Thanksgiving, the holidays, everything else. Good chance to just unwind a little bit. For Wayne, maybe enjoying some Thanksgiving food. For me, just making sure it gets down my throat into my stomach. All kidding aside, it was okay. Enjoyed the holidays and the time off and stuff last week. But we're gonna open it up here. Talk a little bit about this Brett Favre scandal. I think this is like one of two reasons to really cover this, but I think the first is just like it's been in the news. There's been some updates on this front, so I think it's relevant just for sports news in general. But I think also it's kind of like going back to what Wayne and I have covered in the last month or so, I'd say, on topics that involve athletes with crime or things that could lead to lawsuits or anything that involves legal issues. And RG3 rightfully pointed out that it's really unfair that we look at, Draymond and also Devontae Adams in a certain light, but then we won't shine light on, let's say, a white athlete who is also up to no good for their own reasons or, far worse issues than, let's say a punch here or there. So we're going to kick it off. Brett Favre, I think everybody is at least, somewhat aware of what's been going on between himself, the state of Mississippi, and some funding that left the state and went into perhaps the pockets of Brett Favre and other friends of his or colleagues of his, and funneled into the University of Southern Mississippi. And essentially the Department of Human Services of Mississippi has filed a lawsuit against Brett Favre and 38 other defendants in a civil suit for $77 million within the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Fund. It's called the TAMF Fund of Mississippi. Going to these folks in ways that we're not supposed to legally. And, this money is for childcare purposes. It's for workforce solution, trainings and other purposes, also for job preparation for folks in Mississippi, folks that fall under a certain income threshold as well. So we're looking at, perhaps low to moderate income folks, folks of color, just funds that are needed for these people to, live a dignified life and to, try to level the playing field as much as they possibly can in the poorest state in the country. So 6 so far have been arrested, 5 have pleaded guilty. Favre hasn't been arrested. He's not charged criminally, but he filed a motion to dismiss himself from this lawsuit. In a lot of ways, I think what the state is looking at is he's still liable for about $228,000 of interest on money that was taken from this TAN funds and given to Brett Favre for needs that are around a volleyball facility. He got $5 million for his daughter, who's a volleyball player at the university he went to. And they tried to call it a campus wellness center in the way that they were framing this. And, there's been some text messages that have been uncovered by the state in their audit that basically Favre and, a person that works within, the state of Mississippi government had basically been going back and forth about, is this money traceable? How much, will they actually, look over in this, type of transaction? So, there's also a history for Favre with his charity, Favre for Hope, also getting funds from the state for, reasons tied again to his alma mater. And it's just, there's some trends here that we're seeing where, Brett Favre is going to state. He's requesting money. He's text messaging very high up officials, and it's getting into this very sticky situation. So Wayne, I've said a lot here, looking at a lot of the news, a lot of the coverage on this. Just wanted to kick it over to you to share some initial thoughts. I do have some other follow-up questions, but let's just start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just this is definitely a despicable thing, and I would not expect anything less from Favre, I guess, in a sense. So, since he is, Mr. Packer extraordinaire and everything. So, but no, this like the state of Mississippi, according I think to the data, is 20% of the state is living in poverty. And so it's like, this fund is supposed to help them. I mean, hey, there's a lot of, rich states, quote unquote, and all that, but this is like the poorest of the poor. So, and Favre is, definitely rich in any land that he's at or any state that he's in. But if he's in Mississippi, the things that he's doing there, kind of just like is disheartening to a lot of people to be like, hey, if we're in this capitalistic system, but this person's playing by different rules because he has friends on the inside, right? And that really is kind of disheartening towards your average everyday American and average everyday, I guess, Mississippian, if you will, or one of those 20% people that are living in poverty. So it's not a good look. Those text messages are pretty bad. I think that's like the biggest thing that just gives it away of like, what are you doing? Like, he definitely feels like he's kind of entitled to, these funds or, working with people that work for the state and kind of being buddy with them to like, basically do things like, get his daughter, a new volleyball facility since she is a volleyball player there and things like that. There was also that nasal spray, concussion protocol type of startup or something like that some of the funding went into. And it's like, what in the world? Like, isn't that what private equity is for or whatever? Like, yeah, well, why does it have to kind of go through you in order to do all these things? So those types of things I'm very, I guess, disheartened about. And yeah, like I don't understand, this isn't the lawyer, this is where I'm not, I guess in the lawyer side of this, like how's the lawyer just, or how is Brett Favre's lawyer just able to kind of dismiss it, if you will, like from this case, since he's one of the 38 defendants, what certain qualifications does he have that maybe, I don't know, some of the other defendants don't have, or just in the legality sense, what is the legal reasoning for him to actually just be able to dismiss it? So things of that I'm not aware of, but yeah, I mean, those are my initial thoughts, but yeah, what are your other takes now?
Yeah, I mean, Pravakis, what you were talking about as far as like him being a top investor in that nasal spray you're talking about, he got $2.15 million. And, that money doesn't directly go into Brett Favre's pockets, but in the same sense, if it's, behind, some sort of shell or organization that, he is an investor of or is an, owner of, it's a good way to kind of protect, the viewpoint of where those funds are actually going. But the one thing I found funny is, he sent out a bunch of tweets about returning, money and, the money that was tied to the interest that he's liable for, according to the state, but it was $1.1 million. I mean, that's all good for the speeches that he didn't make that were part of, these TAMP funds and stuff. But the problem is like that court at, University of Southern Mississippi and, everything with that volleyball facility, it's already built. So it's like for you to say like, hey, I've returned funds here, but like you have courts and facilities that have been constructed and built, and you basically gave an IOU out to the athletic director of his alma mater that, hey, I'll have the money, I'll get it back to you and this and that, and then went scrambling to these officials and stuff. But, like you're saying with, what legally gets him out of this, they filed a motion to dismiss himself from this case. So we'll see if he actually gets eliminated. But a lot of these circumstances, I feel like, is again, like his status, his stature, he's Brett Favre. He's got a lot of sway in that state. It's probably the reason why he got the money in the first place. So it's like, it's definitely despicable, especially when you think about where the money was going with those funds. And you've got with his own charity, backing breast cancer research and helping disabled kids. It's just like, this is like the lowest of the low, as far as like how you could go about, getting money. Couldn't a GoFundMe page would have worked? Like, hey, I'm Brett Favre, I throw spirals and I, showed up in movies, something about Mary, like, please give $10 to, the University of Southern Mississippi to build it. Like, aren't there other ways to like get booster dollars for your university? And like, isn't that also like a university's job to like recruit within state funding to like, build these facilities and, be able to recruit kids like Deion Sanders' son, which is, who Favre was going after. So I guess with it all is like, where do you see this trending with Favre? I don't know. I mean, how would you go about punishing him? Others? Do you have any other just overarching issues with this?
Well, like how I don't understand. How is it even possible to like have a state fund? How people can have access to that, right? Like, how are they able to kind of manipulate these systems and get funding from these things that are designated towards human services, right? So it's like, how is that even possible? Like, I don't even know that was possible. It's like, well, you could just do that? Like, all right, what's the Chicago things like, right? Like, I don't know. So, like, these are things that, like, like rich people type of things, like where they have, I don't know, access. Well, what's the saying? It's like, how do rich people stay rich? Like getting other people to pay for stuff or whatever. It's like, I mean, that's just nuts how he's able to leverage those things. So, yeah, things like that, and we can always talk about like all the other things that like rich people have access to and all, but it's like, how do they have access to state funding like that? That's the most ludicrous part for things that are designated specifically for, helping out the poorest of the poor. If there was a state fund or something like that for, I guess, small businesses or whatever, hey, sure, I guess fair game. Like, I guess that's a little bit more leeway, right? But no, this is state funding to help out poor people. So how do they hack that system? Like, that's what I have trouble kind of comprehending there. So.
Yeah, and like you, I'm not a swindler or a financial, analyst in a lot of ways to kind of be able to maneuver these deals with state governments and such. But I know that at least from the volleyball facility, they titled it as a campus wellness center. So if you are going to the state of Mississippi, and obviously, like, if you're going genuinely to them and saying, hey, we're trying to build a campus wellness center, this might tie to your program, maybe there's a conversation there. But now that there's backstory between him and the other officials, they're like, okay, how can we spin this? We'll call what you're doing, this investment in your own alma mater in the sports facilities, like a campus wellness center. So it's like, oh, that sounds really nice. Like, but if you have a really nice auditor, people in the state, they're auditing what's actually going on with these financials. That's where this like really hit the head. So it's like, I'm interested to see what happens. Like, I really just hope there's not a dismissal of him as far as being charged. Because if 6 other people have been arrested, like, and you've got this paper trail, like, it's really hard not to hit them hard. But it's like, I've just seen so many rich, powerful, influential people just get off the hook for financial crimes. So it's like, what would make Brett Favre any different in that sense?
Yeah, it almost kind of reminds me, like, this is like the male version of like the whole Felicity Huffman thing, right?
Yeah,
with, the college scandal and like, trying to like get manipulate your transcripts to say like, oh, I'm a volleyball player, even though I never played volleyball, and get like scholarships or whatever, just having a better resume for college and stuff like that. It almost feels like that. It's like, yeah, the rich kind of play different roles from your average everyday person who's struggling along, trying to play by the rules, trying to, and then rich people are just like, oh, I'm going to get state funds from poor people to, do whatever I want, as opposed to like you're saying, like, just start a GoFundMe or whatever, So yeah, hopefully there is some sort of, I guess, justice from there. I mean, everything I've read is just kind of screams like he's guilty. And again, we're not lawyers. It just seems like it just isn't fair, I guess, in that sense. So
yeah, not much else to add. I mean, definitely think he's guilty in this. I hope he's behind bars. I hope he pays like a really, really hefty fine if he goes to jail, or if he's just, not getting any sort of jail time, which I don't think he'll get. But like even the former governor, the last thing I'll say is like, in their text message stream was basically like, the use of these funds are really tightly controlled, and like, I don't want to violate federal law. Haha. It's just like, you get to these points where it's like, you read these text messages and like, there's just no other way to kind of get yourself out of it in a lot of ways. And I just hope it's like, as a society, which I think they've already done, but even further, like, continue to make this known that like, this is what Brett Favre did. These were his actions. Nobody's spinning a web of lies. Nobody's putting out fake news. I know he's tried to discredit, the state, media in some senses. It's just like, at some point, I'd just love to see him take some accountability, look it in the eye, and just be like, hey, I really fucked up, and I didn't mean to do that. I know you guys will never believe me in that, but accept my apology, and I'll, do whatever I can to put more money back into that pot, whatever I can or however I can.
Yeah, I hopefully he does have some sort of redemption type of thing, or if he's not going to go to jail, which I think he ought to, from at least everything I've seen. It's like, yeah, hopefully like he just like, I don't know, goes to soup kitchens and stuff like that, does all Mother Teresa, because this just isn't a good look for him, and everything. And if he has any sore conscience or whatever, he's got to do something and to, I guess, kind of redeem himself. But yeah, in any case, though, it just seems like he's guilty and he ought to be punished for this. So, yeah.
For sure. Well, speaking of Favre and, looking at, where he's, descended from, made a career from, looks like our Chicago Bears will be facing his Green Bay Packers head on this weekend. Both teams are well below 500, well below competing for any sort of playoff berth or anything like that. But Wayne, do you have any thoughts on, both organizations at this point, maybe where they're going from here, what they may be doing to close out the year? And, do you see anything with this game? Do you have a prediction, I guess, for the game?
Yeah. I mean, this is where I'm like, this is like the first time I've ever wished that the Bears would lose, because I do want to keep that. I think we're second right now. And, anybody that's been following us this whole draft thing and all that, and like trying to figure out where the Bears stack up within like the draft rankings, like if we get the second pick, then there could be some leverage there of us being able to trade back for that pick, if somebody is very quarterback hungry. So, I think it's like Houston Texans right now are slotted for the first pick. And, unless they really are set on Davis Mills, who, has like, I guess he's had a decent career, but, it's not been like a game changer, and that's where it's like, okay, maybe they bring in Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, right? Somebody that has a little bit more moxie, is a little bit more of a playmaker, can, create plays in their legs as well as, pass and everything like that. So if that is the route that the Houston Texans want to go, great, good for them. They take that quarterback, but then that leaves in another quarterback for a team to draft potentially. So that's definitely where there could be a fight, to get to that second spot, and the Bears might be able to trade back. I think there's been talk either maybe the Lions, we'll see, or maybe like, I don't know, the Seahawks, if they don't feel like Geno Smith is their, I guess long-term answer at quarterback there. So things like that could come up, teams, organizations with multiple first-round picks. So that's where I'm like, you know what, Justin Fields, take a nap. Like, it's totally cool. It's totally fine, if you do that. And, hey, look, I also know what Darnell Mooney's, I think, out for the remainder of the year, as well as Eddie Jackson. So it's like, in a way, they're kind of just almost are leaning towards tanking anyways. So that's where I just have the lowest expectations there. Just moving on to the Packers, like, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers said that he's good to go. I think he's been banged up here and there. I mean, Jordan Love actually looked pretty decent. When he was playing there, he had that perfect pass to Christian Watson, kind of a slant route. Yeah, I think Christian Watson took it to the house, right? So, hey, I think now is a better time more than ever if I'm the Green Bay Packers to say, hey, maybe let's play around with this idea of having Jordan Love, get some reps here, especially in this lost season. And then, I don't know, potentially maybe they move on from Aaron Rodgers. There's all the talk of maybe Aaron Rodgers, he moves on to a different team, next year. So I think it's Jordan Love's third, fourth year now or something like that. Like, he's got to show something for that first round pick that they gave. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm just hoping that, maybe the Packers win, and then, yeah, the Bears keep their second overall pick status. So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown. The first thought, at least for Bears, was just this thought about tanking for the trenches. I mean, whether you're looking at offense or defense, I feel like that's where I would spend most of our capital, at least through the draft. And no, I definitely don't think they should be rushing Fields back onto the field. I don't want to see him until maybe last game of the season or last couple of games of the season if he's really got a shoulder injury, because really no reason to put him into harm's way with everything coming down the line for our franchise, especially with how great he's been overall. I mean, top 5 in rushing, purely. It's just against running backs too. It's that's incredible. I'm so encouraged by what we've seen from him, even though we've had a poor season. I just feel like he's not the reason why we'd be fighting for the division. I really trust in him now, and I'd love to see where he can take this whole team. But no, your points about the Lions and Seahawks as far as draft, trading up. I think the New Orleans Saints could also be in the mix. I think they have a high second. be interesting. I know Gino's been like kind of touted as their guy for right now. I mean, maybe that'll change if they start to skid a little bit more. With the Lions, it's just tough because we're looking them straight in the eye and saying like, hey, you're in our division, you're our rival. And I think both sides are going to, be probably a little bit squirmish to kind of make those deals with each other. But we'll have to see. I mean, I think what you're getting at, though, makes a lot of sense because if we're holding number 2 overall, there's going to be a ton of demand. And any team that's in those top 10 spots, in the draft order, I would imagine, are probably looking for quarterback help. There are probably very few that aren't. So whether we get 2 in this year's next round, or maybe it's like a first, in 2023, a first in 2024, or something like, just a huge package in the next couple of years, I'd be cool with that. Because I'd love to see us get an edge rusher or one of the top, the top tackle from Northwestern, whatever it is. Like, I just think, depth and, shoring up some of our weaknesses is important. For the Packers, so happy they suck. I mean, I'm just so happy they suck. I was so glad, Brett Favre, sorry, not Brett Favre, chump. Aaron Rodgers, another chump. But like him just being like, yeah, you can discard Devontae Adams. I don't need MVS. I'm amazing. Pay me all this money, $50 million. I'm going to do ayahuasca out in South America and, just be a jerk all of last year. And like, this will be, my reward to you will be, nothing but playoff bursts. And like, I think reality is just really starting to set in. His age is starting to show. I think his like actual care and concern for what goes on in the field maybe is like waning a little bit. Like he has a big media presence. And I think maybe part of that is, playing on him. Maybe it's just, it's okay to like transition off of football at some point. But I definitely think they're in a weird spot because like you're saying, I mean, Jordan Love did show promise, subbing in for Aaron Rodgers who got hurt. And like, I'd love to know how like severe that injury is if they're also trying to tank, like maybe they want to position themselves ahead of the Bears. Like, you don't know, but in any case, this franchise will have to see where they go too, because, I think everybody was, and myself included, like excited about that defense, thought Aaron Rodgers could possibly be like good enough without, his top weapons. But in the same sense, I thought the running game would show out a lot more than it has this year. And it's just been a disaster for them. So we'll see for this game, expecting maybe both have backup quarterbacks. I mean, I still think the Packers are maybe a bit better of a team. So I'll just go with them for the victory, but kind of hoping that happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I don't know, in terms of like how I think the Bears are going to go into the offseason now, I'm like thinking about the offseason already now. It's like, all right, what's the plan? But it's like, yeah, they have a bunch of capital now, over 100 million, right? Obviously, they're going to have a lot of, spots to fill with that capital. They just have a lot of expiring contracts right now. So, but yeah, probably take like a Willie Anderson or Jalen Carter, I think, with the second or maybe third pick that they have is probably what they're projected to do, and then just sign a bunch of players. I think sign a bunch of other linemen or on both sides of the ball. I think is what's going to happen. We've talked about the wide receiver position a little bit. There's some players maybe here and there that they could add, but not necessarily get number one game changers. So, but I think right now though, it's like that's totally fine. With Justin Fields, how he's able to play. They did get Chase Claypool, who we've seen some plays here and there of how Luke Getsy's kind of utilized him, but I certainly think that they could definitely utilize him more, and hopefully, they integrated him into the system, in this the later half of the season. So, Darnell Mooney, unfortunately, I know he's injured for the rest of the year here, but I think he's kind of established himself just like, with Justin Fields. So I anticipate that they'll probably keep him, in the future plans. Cole Kmet, really him and Justin Fields kind of really came along, I think, the past couple games. So hopefully he does stick around. And, I think he's a free agent at the end of the year here. And I'd anticipate he would be back. He is a Chicago, I think it was from Arlington Heights, right? So, or some around that area. So very much, I think he would still want to become a Bear. And I don't think he's too expensive for a tight end either. So, and yeah, just adding some offensive line there. I've done like bunch of mock drafts, I think, for the Bears this past week, just of like, trading for picks or whatever. And I mean, I'm using, was it both PFF and then also like Pro Football Network's one, and it's just nuts. Like, okay, like we can have all these players that are up for awards and stuff like that in college. But yeah, I think Ryan Poles has really set the Bears up for success, I think, this offseason. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And yeah, I think the team's, rookies this year, all in all, I think they did pretty well overall. So I'm kind of speaking like it's the end of the Bears season already, but it almost feels like it is. And it's almost like, okay, I think we did good. We saw what we needed to see. Now it's just, kind of get through the season and, settle on that draft pick now.
Yeah. No, I think the strategy is right. I mean, I see them taking a direction like the Eagles or like the Ravens, and you got this really mobile quarterback who hasn't shown like the most arm talent of, other quarterbacks throughout the league, but the wheels and decision making, he could definitely facilitate a high-powered offense with his legs and just like the threat of some arm here and there. So it's like looking at Lamar Jackson or the progression of Jalen Hurts in year 3. It's like, what do you need around him? You need a stout defense, a strong line. You'd love to have everybody'd love to have a great tight end and a couple of pair of awesome receivers, but maybe that's what separates the Eagles and the Ravens, is that it seems like the Eagles have really put a very strong core receiving wise around Hurts, whereas Lamar is more or less dependent on with Mark Andrews, and then sometimes we get Marquise Brown or Bateman involved in a way, but it seems like they still need some help on the outside and stuff. So hopefully the Bears are keeping that in mind too as they go about this rebuild. But definitely excited. It seemed like we really loaded up on a very young secondary that's very controllable, very cheap. And maybe that was by design. Maybe, Poles knows that, like, I'm going to spend the majority of my defensive bucks, if it's not through the draft, grabbing some linemen, linebackers, maybe he knows, like, salary wise, how he wants to game that, so very interested to see how this plays out. I feel like, I don't know why, I just have like this faith in Poles versus any other executive that's ever come through Chicago, where I'm like, I kind of trust what this guy's doing, and like, it'll either like work out or maybe it won't, but like, I think the design of it is like pretty smart.
Yeah. He's not flashy, which I love. It's interesting because like I think we all remember like Ryan Pace, like, oh, like he traded like a bunch of first round picks, and it's interesting. Bears Twitter would be like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, and Pace we trust and all that. Like I remember hearing all these conversations. Now it's like, oh, he's the worst manager ever. Like, oh, like so bad. It's like, yeah, like didn't anybody see like he was doing things that he was acting very desperate,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's warranted that, yeah, if you do get an ace wide receiver that's in their prime and stuff like that, but like he traded a bunch of picks to move up to get Trubisky, and then trade a bunch of picks to get Mac and things like that. So it's like, okay, and we never saw the fullest potential, I guess, with Mac. At least I think we only had that one season, right, with the Bears where we saw, oh, maybe this is working okay, right? But eventually, after the first season with Matt Nagy and everything, things kind of just showcase like, yeah, this isn't the future. So I do like the way that Poles is kind of, he just really dismantled the team, really kind of going the Danny Ainge route, right? Where, all right, trade your top players in their prime, right? And then just load up on a bunch of picks, and then build through the draft, and then sign kind of build a winning culture, and then sign free agents that kind of fit and mold with the team essentially. So, and hey, I think that's a good recipe for success. If everything can be executed properly. So, yeah, overall, I actually do like what Eberflus has done. I do like Luke Getsy. I think he's kind of Getsy in his play calling it almost kind of reminds me of like the Greg Roman type of way though, where it's like I would like to see more I guess innovation in the passing game a little bit more. He's done great at the running game and being able to utilize that, but obviously with Justin Fields, hey, like he got hurt like on a running play and everything. Like we would much rather him see throw the ball a little bit more and, sit in the pocket. Obviously, it would definitely help if he has, a formidable offensive line. But at the same time, he needs to be creating and designing passing plays that, fit and suit Justin Fields' strengths and also the wide receivers' strengths as well. So, but yeah, overall, I like what I see from the team, at least from this year, kind of what I think what both of us were expecting. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we want to see the Bears win six or seven games. We're like, where do you see that in this roster? So I know we were like, wow, they have 3 wins now. And it's like, oh, I think we're like, oh, they could potentially win more, but now they're on a big losing streak. So, we'll see if they win any more games now with, the injuries that they're facing, potentially not having Justin Fields, for several weeks. So, but overall, I don't mind. I don't mind the tank job right now. So,
yeah, there have been very few seasons where we've gone into it and me being like, yeah, I think this team's actually good. I feel like even when we've been awesome, it's been like, is this team really that good? Your 13-3 Jim Miller teams and stuff. You're just like, is Jim Miller and Shane Matthews really leading this team to a 13-3 season? And, Jay Cutler years, I felt like, hey, we've got, Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey on the outside. That's exciting. You got, Matt Forte behind, Cutler under center and a good defense. I was like, hey, these are exciting teams, but, they always kind of felt like they had a little bit of a ceiling. But, this year with the receiving core, the way it was on paper to, kick off the year, I was like, man, that is a really crappy, athletic roster there. And, they're young. They're still young. New coach. They're learning. They had a bad season last year. But we're moving forward. I think, expectations for next year shouldn't be, playoffs. I think next year it's like, hey, building block year. Let's get to 7-10, 8-9. Let's see what we can do. How are we going to piece this together? So maybe it's a Chicago thing. I feel like, just being from Chicago, I think sometimes our expectations for all teams are a little unrealistic. And it's just kind of like, you should really be thankful and happy sometimes we're going to be a 500+ team. Sometimes I think we like to look at it as we have these championship expectations, but then just the reality situations hey, we're just not there. We're a couple players short of what we really want. So I appreciate direction, and I feel like the Bulls, the White Sox, hopefully they can get back on the right track, but the Bears especially just, draining the swamp a little bit, bringing in some new fresh ideas, some new execs, getting rid of some of the red tape, very good for them as a franchise.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited, with the direction that I think they're going. So I'm very much looking forward to the next several years and kind of what Ryan Poles has, under his sleeve. The free agent market, I think, on both lines look pretty solid overall. So I think there's definitely going to be some opportunity to, up level the talent that we have on our roster. So yeah,
for sure. Do you have any other football thoughts?
I want to know, are you team Mike White or do you I don't even know, do you think Mike White is the answer, or do you think they were a little bit premature on Zach Wilson?
Is there a team Zach Wilson?
I don't there's no team. His own team doesn't want him.
There's probably some young middle junior high girls that are part of Team Wilson. I may be out in Utah, but
with their moms,
and their moms for sure. They're for sure their moms. But it's just my thing with this whole thing. Mike White, by the way, let's just show him some respect. I mean, I know the Bears are a little bit depleted. They're younger, but man, 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. I don't care who you do it against. It's in the NFL. Just got to give him some props for that. That's some respect there. But I will say, unless he can string together 3-4 more of these kind of hey, this guy's winning football games or he's keeping us in the game like a Taylor Heineke or something, then maybe you look at him. But no, I definitely think this is a huge wake-up call for Zach Wilson. It's hey, man, what you said at the press conference was really unacceptable, taking zero accountability, showing no leadership, really getting under the skin of your defense who's been out there all game busting it, not even giving up, more than 3 points really, because it was more of a special teams gaffe. But man, it's just, that's a gut punch for anybody. A lot of veterans have spoke out about that. A lot of analysts that used to play in the game have said their piece. And, Yeah, this is just a learning moment for him. But I think in the process, you just ride out Mike White while you're still, in contention for playoffs, and just see where it goes, because man, you can't have a better performance than he did even against the Bears. So, for right now, I'm Mike White. And in general, I never really got the Zach Wilson hype based on just having like some really cool training camp and like some interesting throws and this and that. Like, I want a guy who's a little bit more battle tested, somebody who's like maybe coming through one of the power conferences, like playing some real opponents, and like, not to say he can't, figure out, a way to become a true professional in this game, but I'm not like wowed by him, and nor was I.
Could you imagine if the New York Jets took Justin Fields now, like with that roster, like,
No, it's ridiculous, dude. Look at that draft, when you got a chance again, and just go down that the first 15 picks of that. And it's just like, like you could have picked it. Not only that, it's just like
Michael Parsons.
Yeah. There were so many playmakers on all fronts, so many good wide receivers. It was like the Jamar Chases and I know I'm missing guys, but it's just like, Mac Jones even would have been a better pick, I would think. But yeah, man, it's just, it's, they had a great draft last year, and that's definitely set them, forward in their own progression. They're doing well as a team. It's just like, that was a huge, immature thing to say, I think, at that presser that he's paying for now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think with Mike White, they got some tough competition. They got the Vikings, and then they got the Bills the next couple weeks. So that's going to be tough. and they're good on the road for both games. And then they got 2 games at home. Looks like very winnable games against the Lions and Jaguars. But then they're back on the road again against the Seahawks and Dolphins. So a little bit 2-2 action, and back in 2 again there. So
I got a question for you. Did you have I don't want to cut you off, but I did have a question for you based on where you're going.
No, yeah, go for it.
All right. Mike White has 2 average to subpar games. They lose 2 straight games. Do you go to Zach Wilson if they are at the 7 seed of the AFC playoffs, or a win or 2 away from getting in? What do you do as head coach?
Oh man, if I was Robert's Sailor, like, I don't know. Joe Flacco, like,
yes.
Yeah, get the Super Bowl winning quarterback that's like on your bench. It's like, hey guys, I'm like, I don't know why you all want to get these young bucks here. Like, I'm the battle tested one here, and it was funny, like earlier in the year, right? Now they're like a running team, right? But even when they even though they lost, so it was a Breece Hall, but like early in the year, like I remember Joe Flacco was throwing like 50 times or whatever. It's like, how do they go from that to like basically running the ball like 80% of the time to like let's maybe pass the ball, I guess, a little bit more with Mike White, like hey, let's have a balanced offense, get Joe Flacco in there, I know he's not mobile. And the line is kind of has been depleted a little bit too, but at the same time, like he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, so maybe he is the guy, and I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like with Zach Wilson, it's like I don't know how you can kind of come back from this. Like they would have to be totally desperate. Zach Wilson, you gotta just shut up, like not do any press conferences, and then I don't know, maybe like just have like a very inspirational. He's gotta like save save his school from like burning down or something like that. I don't know, something like that to help kind of redeem it. His whole backstory, his whole persona, like I made that whole, I guess, joke about like he's dated what his mom's friend or whatever, stuff like that. Like he really just needs to kind of get away from that. But I don't think that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So, but yeah, the Jets are just like one decent quarterback away from having a really good chance, like making a run. And then obviously their line just got hurt. So it's tough.
like in the same scenario we're talking about, it's probably going to take something like that for Zach Wilson to get back on people's good graces. Like it would have to go the next couple of weeks. They lose 2 games with Mike White. They go back to Wilson, and then Wilson strings together wins to get them into the playoffs or damn near close. And it's like, because you're going into next year after another draft, another round of free agency, like your window is going to start to feel like it's closing, especially if you've got like trash at the quarterback position. So it's like, desperation is going to sink in, I think, around draft time again. But for a team that, is showing what they've showed this year, like we are a playoff team, but we're just not having this playoff quarterback ready. Like they might go into the free agency pool and say, who's the best available quarterback? Like we'll pay you more than the market will, because we need somebody who's going to like steer us back into playoff contention.
Baker Mayfield. Here we go again.
Oh man, just the answer they needed. For sure.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if Zach Wilson, if he can, like, I don't know, if maybe this is a come to Jesus moment, right? Or it's like, hey, maybe I had to straighten up a little bit, get serious about, my profession and, what I'm doing with my life right now. So, hey, maybe, the last couple games, like, Mike White just isn't cutting it or whatever. I mean, honestly, like, do they have anything to lose by putting Zach Wilson in there? Maybe the locker room, but if I'm Robert Saleh, then it's like, hey, let's just go out with kind of, what kind of the face that we came in with and see if he has anything. If it's now or never, because, if I'm the GM too, it's like, if Zach Wilson is not the answer, I really, really got to know and be sure about that. Hopefully, I mean, he did not look good against the Patriots at all. And when you're the Jets losing against the Patriots, not a good thing. So, but at the same time, it's like, hey, if he's really not it, like we really got to know this right now. So, and if a second chance or third chance, I guess, with Zach Wilson just doesn't turn out for Wilson, then it's like, okay, we gave you all the shots, now it's done. So,
yeah. I mean, just knowing what's on the market. Jimmy G, if San Fran doesn't want him anymore, I actually think that would probably be a pretty smart move for them with Zach Wilson, just like learning some disciplines there. Daniel Jones shifting lockers, maybe a couple lockers, coloring the locker green instead of blue in the same facility, like possible. I think Daniel Jones is just really not there, but just somebody who's like good enough to just get a starting job to really like amp up the pressure on a guy like Wilson, but we'll see.
Yeah, Jimmy G would be great, I think. So I think that would be a perfect fit, just because like a lot of the young players on their offense they're still like on the rookie contract. So Jimmy G, I guess cap wise could fit right in there, and who knows what they do with Zach Wilson. So, but yeah, that could make sense.
Gotcha. I think football wise, the only thing that I've got other than what we've covered is this fresh beef that's just been circulating on social media about Patrick Peterson calling out Kyler Murray, saying that Kyler Murray is only about Kyler Murray. Thought that was like jaw-dropping, to be honest with you, just like first seeing that, because like Patrick Peterson is the Arizona Cardinals. So like just to call out like one of its, would you would think like one of their future legends in Kyler Murray, like those two are going to be part of like all sorts of future, enshrinements together as part of like the Cardinals, culture and stuff. But called him out, said that. And what I think surprised me even more is Kyler Murray came like straight back with like, wow, can't believe you would put that out there. You said you're a big brother, a mentor. You imagine him saying that to Kyler like while being a Cardinal. But like, I guess it's like, the question to you is, what do you think about either side of this? Like, do you have something compelling you, or like, do you have a side that, you think is telling the truth here, or being like more honest than the other?
Well, it's kind of like, Kyler Murray, what exactly has he accomplished compared to Patrick Peterson, who, multiple Pro Bowls, like all pro, like I know he's with the Vikings now, but he was like the best player for the Cardinals for a while. I think it was like, with him and JJ Watt, right? So there's a lot of respect there. It is interesting that a current, like, he's an active player, calling out another active player, that he played with and everything. So in a way, it's kind of like, if I'm Kyler Murray, yeah, like, I get it, but at the same time, he has to take eventually you got to take responsibility or something like that. Or in a way, actually, I think he's kind of putting more fuel to it now. So, if he never responded to it, I feel like, it might have gone on deaf ears, but the fact that he responded to it, it's kind of like, was the Barbara Streisand effect, which I think we talked about, where it's like she made it more, bigger than it ought to have been. So I think Kyler Murray's kind of doing that right now. Does Patrick Peterson have a point? Maybe. In a way, I'm kind of maybe coming from, like, I think Kyler Murray, like, he's won at every single level he's played football with, like, and then now he's kind of running into this whole thing. And a lot of players have done this, right? But I think Kyler Murray, like, he was like the best player in, like, Texas football history, right? And then now he's kind of been struggling with the Cardinals, has, been made fun of for not watching film and just playing Call of Duty and stuff like that. So it's like, he hasn't really necessarily said, in my opinion, like, not necessarily said, like, anything wrong or bad or like any Zach Wilson level type of stuff, but kind of like at the same time, it's like he hasn't really just been, I guess, that formidable leader, quarterback, that franchise person, that carries the offense a little bit on. So I think that's where maybe he does have a little bit of a point there. But at the same time, like, I actually do appreciate that Kyler Murray, like, he ought not to, in my opinion, he ought to have, like, reached out to Patrick Peterson, probably not in public, but yeah, like, private message, like, hey bro, like, what did you do this for? Like, I thought, I think he called him, like, potential mentor or big bro, right? So it's like, if that is the case, if you really believe that, like, I get that he's Patrick Peterson's doing this kind of on his podcast, PFF, posted about it, but at the same time, I feel like, you're also kind of antagonizing him at the same time. And that just makes it kind of look like a quarrel rather than like, hey, I'm kind of coming from a place of respect. Like, what do you mean by all this? Like, can I get a straight answer from you? So, but yeah, all in all, it's just like it is an interesting situation. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I feel like a lot of things are said on podcasts, like ours and others. It's like, you got to say stuff that you feel, but you also have to say stuff that you think is going to get attention, eyeballs, ears, whatever it is. And I think Patrick Peterson may have been stewing on this, like you said, for some time. I mean, maybe it's something like he saw, maybe some arrogance of Kyler Murray and how he came through, his preparation or lack thereof, his inability to be a true leader. They bring in guys like a JJ Watt, like, D-Hop maybe before the suspension. Like, did they need to bring those guys in to, like, add a little bit more, maturity to the clubhouse? Like, perhaps, like, I do get this sense or vibe just watching, like, Hard Knocks that, Murray cares about, winning football games. Like, I think he cares about losing and this and that, but there is some sort of, like, I don't know. I don't know the guy. Obviously, I haven't been in the locker room with him or whatever, but just kind of like, I'd imagine if I was getting paid $40 million, I would carry myself a certain way. But like everybody else in that, locker room isn't on the same shelf as him as far as pay goes. And it's just like, at some point, you got to kind of look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, my responsibility is to be everything for this team. Like, I've got to, set the tone on every single front. I've got to take all the heat. I've got to, be almost perfect in the way that I do my job. And if I'm not, maybe I'm sacrificing some money to bring in more talent, like a Tom Brady, has done over his career. It's kind of, I think that maybe that's where Patrick Peterson's coming from. It's like, man, you sit on this throne and you're not winning football games and you're not making people better. And that's my franchise. Like, I'm on the Vikings now, but like, that Patrick Peterson would love to end his career, fully with the Cardinals. I think they let him go. And I think he's got a lot of spite there for the organization. But I think it probably stings a little bit more because it's the Cardinals.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, you have like one of the best quarterbacks in the game, with Patrick Peterson. And then you have, a player like Kyler Murray, who's like, maybe top 15 type of quarterback, but it's like he's going to get paid like 3 times more than Patrick Peterson. And, if I'm the GM and it's like, okay, sure, he's top 15, but maybe he can be top 10 in a couple of years or something like that, right? So you're kind of banking on that. So you're going to put more of your cap money onto the quarterback, right? We see that time and time again. And, I think a lot of the Seahawks, right, they kind of got pissed off with Russell Wilson, just like he ate a lot of the bunch of the cap space. He definitely was kind of corny and all that, but that does carry some resentment from some of the players, right? Like the Richard Shermans of the world. Like, wait, you're like our highest paid player, right? But then you also were the reason kind of why we lost the Super Bowl at the same time. So with the pick to Malcolm Butler, right? So it's like what you're getting all the money, but yeah, you're not giving props to the defense enough, right? You're kind of just being like this plain vanilla person that kind of, I guess, is what the persona that Russell Wilson's built on right now, and obviously he's struggling with the Broncos and such. But back to, I guess, the whole Kyler Murray thing, it's like, yeah, if you're gonna make all this money, like there's gonna be some resentment I think from other people, and it's like, hey, you either just got to brush it off or you got to prove everybody wrong, right? And the only way to prove people wrong sometimes is simply winning, and they're just not doing that right now. So,
that organization, and I have to say, starting with him, you've got to look at him, squarely on this and say, like, there are some inconsistencies in how he goes about his game, probably about how he's leading. Again, it's just like, it's a real disappointment for that team. Like, I felt like after last year's playoffs, when they just completely got trounced, coming into this year, they might've been like a average to below average team. I just had this sinking feeling just with, I think Watt was out, D-Hop was getting that suspension. It was kind of like, who are the Cardinals this year? It was kind of hard to like put your finger on what they were identity wise. So we'll see what happens from here on out. Like, I'll keep following this. Like, I want to see if there's any more back and forth here. Maybe they're done. Maybe they have a conversation at some point. But anyways, decided to throw that out there for sure.
Yeah, no, this is like reality TV. I feel like this is like, like, was it women will watch like the Real Housewives and stuff like that? We'll listen to, or watch grown men argue about stuff on Twitter. Millionaires arguing stuff about on Twitter, right? Like pro athletes. So, but yeah, it'll be fun. I think, maybe there's like Patrick Peterson ought to have Kyler Murray on the podcast now. I think that's what needs to happen for them. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Moving on to baseball. Couple things. Looking at our White Sox. Number one, we said goodbye to Jose Abreu. He signed a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Houston Astros. We've talked about the White Sox roster in general, what they needed, what they were kind of looking at going into free agency, cap space, everything else. And I believe on the same day this week, they inked Mike Clevinger to a 1-year, $12 million deal to, essentially be, the fifth, member of that starting rotation at this point. But Wayne, just wanted your thoughts on both of those signings.
I mean, good for the Astros. They don't even have a GM, right? Like,
yeah, not really.
Yeah,
just Jim Crane.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't know how that'll work out. I was like, Brady was like, "Hey, can I just join?" And they're like, I don't know. The owner was like, "Yeah, sure. Here's a bunch of money. Want it?" Like, yeah, okay. But yeah. So, I think it's a great signing for the Astros. Gurriel's gone, right? So I think it's great for them. Like, you look at that lineup, it's sick. It's pretty sick. I think Abreu is going to be like what 6th or 7th or something like that in the order there, and that's just nuts. So you're talking about someone who was an MVP, right, like 2 years ago. So and this year he wasn't so bad either. So I think going forth, I know he's 36 or he's going to be 36. So it's like, yeah, he's getting older, but he's still a really good bat, takes care of himself, really excellent professional. Kind of sad, I think, of like, how he kind of departed. I think a lot of people made fun of, like, I guess, Jerry Reinsdorf and how, like, kind of what he said, about Abreu, kind of was like kind of soft ass, if you will. So I don't know, like it definitely is a mixed feeling, but I think it's nice, I think, for Abreu. Hopefully he does kind of win a ring, even though I kind of like, not the Astros again. So I do wonder if this is like, going to be, I guess, finalizes this whole like Justin Verlander maybe coming back type of speculation. I mean, it sounds like Verlander wants like 40 million a year, and I don't know if like, the Astros are going to be able to get that done, especially if they don't have a GM, or I don't know. But again, hey, it looks like they're able to get deals without a GM. So, but Abreu, a great player. Definitely think he kind of belongs into the talks of like White Sox great first basemen, with the Frank Thomases, Paul Konerkos, and all that. So, but I don't know, Mike Clevinger. It's definitely a mixed feeling. It's glad it's like a short-term type of deal. That totally makes sense there. For 1 year or so, has battled, I think, the past couple of years, injuries. Kind of has limited his production. Had like a career high, like an ERA this previous season with the Padres. Was pretty decent or okay, like kind of what you expect from a fifth starter. I think like maybe 3/4 to the season, but his last quarter of the season was pretty awful. And we saw it in the postseason too, right? I think he had was it like 6 runs on him or something like that, and like no outs, I think, in his like last outing, as a Padre. And I think that's when I was like, let's get him out of here. So hopefully, he shows a little bit, maybe somewhere between probably between his Padre self and then his when he was in Cleveland, right? Like that version where he had like a 3 point whatever, like mid threes ERA. So if we can get something like that out of a fifth starter, great deal. Maybe some spot starts here and there, if things don't work out. So 1 year deal, I don't think it's too bad, but could there have been better deals? Maybe, but at the same time, I think there's a lot worse people that we could have signed than Clevinger. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess touching on Abreu, the first thing that I noticed was 3 years, $60 million. And I just thought to myself, like, hell no. I mean, hell no, based on where we're at, what we need as a team. Love Jose Abreu as a player, what he's done, all that. And, granted, if we didn't have a first baseman, DH, replacements kind of lined up who have the potential and ceilings like those two guys do and have put up output, despite injuries. I might be thinking a little bit differently, but if that was a 1 year deal for that same amount, I'd be like, okay, I can see that. I get that. For the Astros, I think they're almost looking at it like we're paying you 2 years, $60 million in reality, because, you're paying for diminishing returns once you get to the back end of your 30s. Like you said, Jose Abreu, consummate professional, has kept his body in great shape, almost plays, full season every year. So I respect that about him. And even last year with, his power production going down, his hard hit, percentile was one of its best. His ability to hit off the top 25 pitchers in the game was, elite. So it's like, he's still there as far as a player goes, and putting him in the Astros lineup is just like, that's disgusting. I mean, I'm all on board with his talent. I guess I was just looking at it from the financial perspective of like team need, where we're at, what's his actual value, and like teams are going to pay up in free agency, especially at the start. So, it all makes kind of sense in a way, but I think we made the right call. And I know a lot of Chicago media out there. I've listened to a lot of Chicago White Sox podcasts lately, and people are destroying this. And I get it. I feel like sometimes is it like the emotional rational, like where are we at on that scale with a guy like Jose? Because he's like Paul Konerko. He's like Frank Thomas. I mean, he is like, he's a White Sox. Like you can't, see him any other way. So I totally get that. But I think we made the right move. Clevinger was a guy that I had on our list, like on the starting pitcher, like guys that I think are really attractive. And I say this because 2017 to 2020, one of the best starters in the American League, went 200 innings, one of those seasons. Other than that, his, K per 9 percentage was great. His velocity was looking good. He's got the weirdest delivery maybe in the big leagues. And maybe that's something that Ethan Katz works on him with. But, I think a lot of people, especially media and, these analysts that I'm talking about, they kind of, look at this fact that he's coming off of Tommy John and say, okay, well, he's, damaged goods. He can't bounce back for them. He can't rebound from it. But it's like Jacob deGrom, Steven Strasburg, Adam Wainwright. These guys all came back from Tommy John and have had like very successful careers. I mean, I don't have to say much about a lot of those guys. I mean, Strasburg even won, World Series MVP coming back from a Tommy John surgery. So I don't think that that's like the one thing I'm going to pin this all on. And, he's already a year removed from that. He went through, a very, like you said, mediocre season. Velocity was down. He was getting hit pretty hard. But he knows how to pitch in the major leagues, and he's a seasoned vet, and he takes care of AL Central opponents. And that's something that statistically can't be, disproven. And, a 1 year prove it deal for me, for a guy like that. I mean, he's going to come into this season like licking his chops. Like he's trying to, bank on that next big contract, maybe his last big contract. You don't know. But, I think with these signings, they got to like start thinking about other things for the White Sox. So I will come back to that. But if you have any reaction to that, cool. Other than that, I was also looking for like, what now do you see with the White Sox based on where we were on our last episode versus where we are now?
Yeah. I mean, Michael Conforto. I think those are all great points. I'm thinking like, we still need outfield. We still need second base, right? I think those are the two ones there. But yeah, I agree everything you said with Clevinger. Prove it deal. If we can get, again, he's gonna be our fifth starter. Hopefully, Kopech is healthy enough, right? So as the fourth starter there, and the rest of the order. Hopefully Giolito has a bounce back and everything, like, et cetera, et cetera. So, but, it is nice to see that we had Dylan Cease really kind of stand out there second in the Cy Young. So overall, like, I feel pretty good right now with the pitching squad. Like, I don't know who else we were thinking we're going to get, like what, Justin Verlander? Like, no. So, so definitely for that. But yeah, everything else, I know we touched about like all the left-handed outfielders out there. I think one name somebody tossed out to us in the YouTube comments actually was Cody Bellinger. It was just like, okay, maybe, let's get all this money out there and everything and just like toss it in there. So, but hey, if we could, why not? If the price is right. But yeah, I'm definitely looking at like, Michael Conforto over there a little bit more so of, and then, is Adam Frazier probably at second base is probably like the top people on my list at this moment that seem reasonable in terms of contracts that we could potentially get. So, but yeah, what are your thoughts, Pat?
I guess with the Clevinger thing, the only other, piece of that I wanted to bring up was this idea of folks being torn between Clevinger or just re-signing Cueto. I'm okay with what we did because like Cueto is back end of his 30s as well. He was on a minors deal, free agency walk deal, where it's kind of like he was hungry. He needed to prove himself. He needed to get back on that bump. He had, motivation to do so. But if you throw him, 2 years and, double digit millions for his time, like how hungry is he going to be? Like, is he going to bounce back and be what we saw in 2022? Or, are we seeing a guy who's now fed and is like, well, I can be, 4.20, 4.30 ERA, like no sweat. So I'm kind of on that line of like, sign these deals, even if they're 1 years, I'd love to have a multi-year commitment with, a guy with, Clevinger's type of upside. But, in a year like this, like if we're on that fence between, are we contenders still, or, do we have to make more changes, in 24, like we'll get there, we'll get there when we do. Love that you brought up Michael Conforto for the outfield. Like that was a guy, he's doubling back on some, analytics and stuff. I mean, a guy who's 70, second percentile in, it's outfield, average, outs, I believe. It's a, basically a kind of a looking at his, range in the outfield, whether or not balls, were hard to catch, easy to catch. They kind of put a gauge on, how difficult some of these plays were and how routine others were. And he's in the 72nd percentile of outfielders as far as his coverage goes, in the outfield. In the same sense, like his OBP is also 73 percentile. So it's kind of like, we're looking for a guy who can play defense and get on base for us because, we've got a lot of guys I think who have some power potential, and it'd just be nice to have, some extra RBIs attached to those. I brought up Kurt Kiermaier in the past, so I don't want to get into that, but I think he'd be just another, quality defensive outfielder, left-handed hitter to put out there. And looking at Gene Segura one more time, I mean, I know we're also looking at the lefty-righty splits, but I mean, this guy's just like a pure hitter, and he actually plays really good defense too. And, with the shift being, banned, it's kind of like, I'd love to have a second baseman who's got some great range. I know Frazier does as well. So it's like, I'm okay with either of those options, but I think we definitely need some true major leaguers in all three of those spots.
Yeah, no, I think Segura is good, and he did show like he still has some game, with the Phillies and everything. So I do like him overall. So another name out there, we'll just be tossing names because hey, that's what we're all about here. So other names that I could potentially like, would be like Andrew Benintendi actually. Didn't play too much, I think, with the Yankees. Split time between the Yankees and the Royals here, but overall, like he gets on base, hits pretty well, and has an excellent glove. So it's like, what kind of more do you want from an outfielder? When you already do have like players like Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez and like a bunch of power, a healthy Tim Anderson, right? So I think he could fit right in pretty well there. And then if we really just want to like go crazy and I know this name's been kind of tossed around a little bit too. Joey Gallo, if that is possible too. Joey Bats, like if I know he's definitely like kind of the Adam Dunn type of level, right? Where he just hits homers, strikes out, or walks, right? Nothing in between. So, but hey, if we can get him at a decent price too, again, that's the big kicker there. Why not take a 1 or 2 year deal on him or something like that? So I think somebody like him could step right in and provide more power from the left side there. So
yeah, I mean, outside of just the outright signings, I think one thing that's become a little bit more clear, or like the potential for it, is who we would actually trade. I kind of feel like I'm getting these vibes of like a Liam Hendricks or Graveman going somewhere for an outfielder. I know we've talked about Gavin Sheets too, but a lot of analysts are talking about one of the core pieces of this team, whether it's Jimenez, Robert, Anderson, or Moncada being dealt. I don't see Moncada based on his salary and his, just the contract in general. But I mean, I can definitely see us dealing from within to kind of like patch up some of these holes and not have to, go above the, the cap limits that they've set. So it's just like, maybe it is plucking from this bullpen where it's like maybe some of these guys can have some bounce back years where if you lose a Hendricks, like you're still well enough covered to, miss out on a star closer or something like that. But what I've heard is that they're just going to be active at these winter meetings. And I feel like, people are saying like they're going to wheel and deal. And I'm like, all right, like, let's see what we got. But just excited for what's to come.
I don't know. And if they want to go inward and go the cheaper route, I mean, Oscar Callis, right? It's like, could he? Like he's had eventually you got to bring up some of these people that he's 24 years old. He's only going to get older. Like I think that's a good age. And he's shown production in the AAA level. So, hey, maybe we see if he's able to, depending on spring training does and everything, maybe we'll just see how he does and kind of play him throughout. So, there's definitely options I think out there for the White Sox, but yeah, we'll see how things transpire.
Yeah. On a similar note, I've heard Lennon Sosa might get strong looks at second. I've heard Romy Gonzalez might too. So like you're saying, it's like we've got this depth at the minor leagues that's like graduating from AAA, and it's like it's now or never, boom or bust. And Colas, I think, has much more of an upside than those other two guys, but in the same sense, it's like, we might just have to give them a look and pair them with a Lurie Garcia or, like somebody who's been there and kind of done it a little bit. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I'm like, do the White Sox need more leadership or something like that? Like, I know Tim Anderson, he's kind of like the one person there, but, they lose somebody like Abreu, right? You definitely need those players that are kind of like quasi coaches. And Abreu was definitely like, spoke Spanish, Cuban, they have a lot of Cuban players, et cetera. So he was definitely kind of that staple there. So now it's like, well, where's that going to come from? Like, I know we have a new manager and everything, and he seems great and all, but yeah, definitely need more of that leadership, I feel like. And so it's like, do we go through free agency on there, or can we expect some of these other players to step up and kind of provide that mature older brother or uncle or father type of figure to some of the younger players that are around? So yeah, I think those are my only thoughts of like, do we get that from free agency, or hey, maybe we do ask some other people, some of these players to step up more so.
Yeah, or the hiring of their hitting coach, Jose Castro, out of the Atlanta organization. I mean, Cuban native. Somebody who probably speak to Yohan, Eloy, Luis, kind of get in their heads. I mean, he worked with Atlanta for the last 8 years. So you look at the hitting that's come out of their minor league systems onto the major league field. I mean, that could speak volumes. I mean, I think Grifol is also going to be leaned on a lot for that kind of mentorship and guidance outside of, losing a guy like Jose, who, everybody said is a class act and a great leader. I think as far as that goes, just on that note of like, maturity or growing and things like that, I think, maybe the impetus for some of these deals will be around that, like bringing high character acquisitions, whether it's free agency, trades. I mean, maybe it is shaking up the culture of the team. Maybe, Jose was great in his own right, but maybe he just wasn't enough to really like balance out the personalities in that, locker room. So maybe you eliminate a couple of them, or you overwhelm them with stronger personalities or, new factions or something like that. So I'm kind of like just interested to see how they're identifying what they actually need.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, regardless, in Rick Hahn we trust, right? So
yeah. Anything else in baseball? I don't know, on your mind or signings that you've seen otherwise that are interesting to you?
Yeah, not too many. I know we like gave like our top predicted signings. We haven't really seen too many go out there yet. I did hear was it Aaron Judge got offered, and I don't know how this all got out, but was it like a $300 million 8-year contract or something like that? So curious, yeah, what do you think about that for the Yankees if he were to re-sign with them for that amount of money?
I think it's a fair deal. Is it the deal that's gonna close the books on that? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I feel like if you're going shorter years, the average annual value is probably gonna have to be the best in baseball, because I feel like every time we get to a new free agency year, these guys are free and they're like, well, I want to be the new trendsetter. I want to be the top dog. So if you're not going to pay me for 15 years at X, millions, I want the highest, per year. So I think he'd probably have to rise like almost around 40 million, I'd say, for a season. And, I don't know if this is their last offer, but it's just, you get to that kind of money if you're not going to be a team that's going to go wildly over the cap and get into like, the tax penalties, and like maybe you bite the bullet and just do it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little skittish on Aaron Judge for a few reasons. I mean, before this year, what did we really see him as? I mean, we saw him as maybe at best a $30 million player per year, maybe. He's been, riddled with injuries in his 20s. What's he going to look like in the back half of his 30s? So those kinds of things get on my mind. Like, I know he hit the 62 home runs, he is in a favorable hitting park and stuff like that. But I'm a little nervous about a guy like Aaron Judge. Like, I just haven't seen enough at that kind of level where I'm like, yeah, like you're the kind of guy I think can take us to the next level and win, pennants and World Series and all this other stuff. So I'm kind of like, it's a fair offer, but I don't think it's the last.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's the saying about, I like your point about long-term deals. Like why would players do that, right? Because yeah, what is it like us normal peasants do, or what's that best practice? Like, yeah, you ought to job hop like 2 or 3 every 2 or 3 years or something like that, because that's the the best chances of you getting a raise or something. So but yeah, that's like kind of like I think what a lot of players these days are probably aiming to do more so of is the TV money for whatever reason is going crazy. So, a lot of these TV companies are trying to just buy these rights because they know that sports is kind of like the last horizon for like live TV, right? So, players are going to get a lot more of that cash. That's kind of what happens with the NBA and, all the other the NFL as well and MLB. So it's like, hey, maybe Judge takes like 3 years, 40 million with the Yankees, or maybe like a 4 or 5 year, and then assesses then, hey, all right, maybe, hey, New York's really expensive. Maybe I go somewhere, cheaper, Florida or something like that. So, but I don't know. It really depends, I think, what Judge wants. If he really wants to become a Yankee, then I don't know. Maybe that is a good deal for him. But yeah, like you were saying, if I'm the Yankees, it's like, wait, we paid all this money, but then you've been injured like ever so off, like off and on throughout your career with us. So, is it kind of worth it? We get you're a fan favorite too, but hey, we also got to win. So, but I think Judge is overall, I think it's a good deal. I think overall for him at least. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the only other thing that I've seen, and I mean, deals are probably still to come. Wilson Contreras also met with the Astros today. So I was kind of just like, man, if they were to sign Wilson Contreras, like just stealing the hearts right out of Chicago. I mean, honestly, like one of the scummiest organizations around right now, just taking the prized possessions of Chicago, but still, like, just adding Contreras to that team, regardless if they sign Verlander back, it's like, that's going to be like, it's going to remind me of the 1990, Indians, just stacked with guys that were Hall of Fame candidates, and just one of the most power-packed offenses of all time. I mean, this would be one of the greatest offenses I think we'd see in this modern era. So let's hope it doesn't happen for our sake. Just if we want to be contenders, but man, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, along with that pitching stuff, like that's the funny part. Is like, yeah, we'll get rid of Verlander, the Cy Young or whatever. Like, we don't mind. We'll just load up on our offense more. And oh yeah, by the way, like everybody else in our pitching staff and our bullpen, they did really, really well in the postseason and the regular season. So really not many drawbacks, I think, for their strategy at the moment. So, I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah. And why pay, $40 million a season for what could be diminishing returns for a guy who's going to be, playing in his age 40 season? It's like, I think the same strategy would apply for the White Sox right now. Like the Astros, I think we have a starting 5 on paper, but maybe we wait for this whole, off season to kind of take place. Guys sign everywhere, and there's going to be some leftovers. And, like we did with Johnny Cueto last year on the minors deal, the Astros could go right out and maybe get a Ross Stripling who doesn't get, a contract he wants, or maybe we sign a Kyle Gibson to a, minors deal and have him be our, swing man. So if, one of our starters go down, we have somebody like, hey, this guy's pitched, he started major league games. He's serviceable enough. Like maybe he's got some juice left.
Yeah. I think, the Astros are definitely at a different playing field right now with they have options, I think, and they're really, really utilizing. Yeah, they don't need a GM. Like apparently they're doing fine. So yeah.
That whole situation could be an episode on its own, like Jim Crane dismissing a couple of executives that just won a World Series. It's like, like the way I've heard he works is just like, you're basically a yes man to Jim Crane, and like he's going to take credit for all the player decisions. He's done a great job, I guess, but I guess he doesn't like giving up much control.
Yeah, that is interesting because I think like Click is much more the analytics person and like using sabermetrics and all that. Or it sounds like Crane's like, no, let's just get Jose Abreu and let's just spend a bunch of money on him. Let's spend a bunch of money on Wilson Contreras, and yeah, we're good. Okay, shut up. Like you don't need data for that or a spreadsheet for that. So yeah,
pretty much. Well, yeah, I think this was covered the gamut of football, baseball for right now. Wayne, did you have any other final thoughts here?
Not at this moment, but I know December is approaching us and everything. The holiday season is coming and all. So, moving on, I guess, to more of the breakfast or food part of our little podcast here. Curious, what are your favorite, winter foods, winter snacks that you usually partake in, when it gets a little bit cooler, when you're in the Midwest or even when it gets cooler over there in the DC area?
Yeah, this is a great question. So for everybody sitting back at home, get out your sweatpants. This is the time of year where it's totally cool to eat deep dish pizza, lasagna, baked ziti, you name it. If it comes in like a deep serving tray and it's like, quiche, or it's, just a very rich pasta, whatever else it could be, this is the time to do that. It's the time to get completely full. I love drinking some red wine right around this time of year, especially with Italian food. And, just watching, good movies, as the weather, slowly takes you out from outside to kind of just, just being a complete waste of life on your couch or wherever you're at, across Chicago, or if you're in the DMV area and such. So I think those are like kind of my go-tos. I'd also, bringing back some pie. I mean, I think, we've covered pie and in very rich detail, but like, this is pie season. Like, you want to be eating lots of pie, lots of cake, other things that just, make you feel incredibly full. How about you?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I mean, is there any time not to eat pie? I feel like during the winter time, it's like, you know what? I need to like get some natural insulation for survival. So I am going to load up on carbs, going to load up on pie, going to eat whatever the hell I want, for survival. So, especially if it's nice and warm. I will add too, it's like, I love chocolate. So, chocolate definitely helps there, whether it's a hot chocolate or a nice Swiss chocolate, during the winter. Some warm, hot nuts, if you're in the Chicago area, like going to the Chris Kindle market and getting some, fresh walnuts that are just got heated up and everything. I think those
like
are
the cinnamon.
Yeah.
Oh, those are so. I know what you mean. Those are great for sure.
Yeah. It's like that. Getting a bratwurst or some schnitzel, and then the boots, with some, I guess, some heated wine in there too. So yeah,
that's a game changer. The Chris Kindle market, the hot wine. I've always liked sitting in that tent. Anytime I've gone there, I think I've been like a handful of times over the years. But that's like a real draw. And they give you those mugs to go and stuff. I think I still have a couple here, but definitely a fan of that.
Yeah. They actually just opened. Yeah, they opened one out in Wrigleyville now. So that it's actually in Wrigley Field. They have one in downtown, and they actually have a Chris Kindle too in Wrigley Field. So yeah. So that would be the only reason why I go to that area. But yeah, so check that out.
For sure. I mean, I think is going back to the food choices. This is the one time everybody talks about, what do you like deep dish pizza? Would you recommend it? This and that. And like, for somebody who's not from Chicago, who's not like just willing to go over to Lou Malnati's in like the middle of the summer, I always say like the perfect time to get deep dish, even for like the first time, is definitely like the winter time. So like, if you can just have like that, delivered and split that with you and a friend or two. I think this is like where deep dish pizza like hits its like, its climax.
Again, yeah, getting that natural insulation. I feel like any excuse where we can just butter up anything and then just eat and then watch football, like, this is a great time to be a guy and just be like all, Neanderthal about all that. So, no, yeah. I'm definitely much more of a Pequods person, but I do respect. Yeah.
No, I'm with you, Wayne. I'm with you. Yeah, that's my number one. So, didn't want to get twisted, but.
Yeah. No, yeah. Definitely Pequods person. So, yeah.
Awesome. I was going to join you on this note of food and, with a closing thought, but like dessert wise, man, I'm really into edible cookie dough. I mean, like we're talking about, like it's that time of year or whatever, but like this last weekend I got chocolate chip edible cookie dough and also a like funfetti type birthday cake one. And like, obviously was sharing with my wife or whatever else, but like seriously, like if you haven't tried edible cookie dough, not the type that'll get you sick if you're making actual cookies and putting them in the oven to bake and stuff, but just like eating that straight out of a jar. I mean, I swear, like, I don't know if there's a better dessert. I mean, I think I was just missing like a little ice cream on the side, just to like, stack it maybe 75-25 with the dough versus the ice cream. But man, have you ever had that or know of any places that just do edible cookie dough, like a ice cream spot that just, kind of focuses on that?
I don't think so. No, I think that actually makes more sense than like gummies, I believe, because it's got like that fatty, sugary type of feel. So I feel like that's a better way to utilize that. And yeah, the fun stuff too at the same time. So Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. I wonder if like, have you heard of Levain's bakery? It's like a New York thing.
Oh, the big cookies.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a way to like infuse that with like Levain's like chocolate chip cookies. That could be something, or getting the cookie dough there. So,
man, they should consider that. They should consider packaging that up and like distributing that nationwide.
Yeah. Well, maybe not nationwide. I think it might be federal, legal for that. But still, yeah, I think it's a great idea though for them to do that.
Wait, what's wrong with cookie dough? Is there like what's going on?
Well, I don't mean like the edible side. I would say.
Oh, dude, yeah. Do you think? No. This cookie dough is not THC. There's no THC in the cookie dough.
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. I think you can get the cookie dough delivered to you. I think through like Goldbelly or whatever, but not with like weed in there or whatever. So.
Oh yeah. No, definitely not. No, we don't do that here. No, I'm just no. I guess. Anyways, I hope my point didn't get to me eating edibles, but no, I definitely think there are some places here in the DMV area that seriously are like ice cream shops, but they make edible cookie dough and they deliver it, like again, DoorDash, Grubhub, whatever. But then you can also get in your grocer's freezer. So you just like Toll House makes it. Other big brands make it. I think like Nestle has some too. Reese's might have some, but like. Seriously, if you've never wandered in the dessert aisle at the grocery store, just a little bit, like take a second look, because like you go by the pudding section, it should be there. And I'm telling you right now, it's seriously like one of my favorite desserts. And it's like I got to be careful with it because it's so addictive, and I can like crush it, but it's very filling and very heavy.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I love good cookie dough, regardless, either to eat fresh from like whatever can or whatever, or fresh out of the oven too. So yeah.
Well, sounds good. I'm getting hungry yet again here out at night, like every time we close out an episode here. But good recap. If anybody out there has any comments, please place them here on YouTube. Any reviews on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Follow on Instagram. We're nearing almost 1,000 in followers, which is really exciting. Anything on that front, we just appreciate your support, your comments. So, stick with us, and, we'll be back really soon.
Take care, all.